Xpress Outdoors has a really cool segment that we call Beyond the Boat. This personal, sit-down, one-on-one conversation with our featured guests allows us to explore the other side of who this person really is. We get a chance to delve into their personal and professional life, why they got into the outdoor industry, and what makes them who they are today. Join us as we get a bit beyond the boat with Xpress Outdoors. Well, you and I have been personal friends now for 25 plus years, and I know you have a passion for the outdoors, and you really excel in marsh management. I know that seems to be your passion.
Yeah.
You were actually born in New Orleans, is that correct?
Born in Metairie, right outside of New Orleans. Yeah.
So give us a little history on where you came up and how you become to be involved so much in the outdoors.
Well, I was born in Metairie. We went to St. Catherine Siena School, grammar school, St. Aloysius High School in New Orleans. That's where my brothers went, my dad went, and I went. Then after that, I had to make a decision. I wanted a job where I can get dirty every day and they pay me for it. That's what I want. And I'll never forget, I was banding ducks at Salvador and living with my folks in Metairie. And my dad always got up early and 4 or 5 o'clock, drink coffee, and I was just coming in from banding ducks, mud from head to toe. He looked at me, he said, "Son, when are you going to grow up and get a job?" I said, "I got a job. I got the best job. I'm running the airboat now." And I always loved it, Doug. To me, it was a holiday. Mondays were just like Saturdays to me. I love what I was doing, and the best part about it, we were getting results. We had some tremendously good people on staff to keep us right, to keep us going in the right direction, and we had some administrators in Baton Rouge, Alan Ensminger, who flew his own airplane, would come down and we'd fly and we'd follow the Gators with his airplane, and you'd ask him, "Well, Alan, can we do this?" He said, "Boys, y'all should have done that 2 years ago." So it was always encouraging for us to do it, and that's what was so much fun for me.
And you and I have had many conversations. You've also traveled around the world. You've not just been stuck here in Cameron Parish, Louisiana.
Yeah, I served on the Crocodile Specialist Group, and I traveled to Australia, New Guinea, South America, Central America, Africa, India, and I helped them set up their crocodile farming programs. We were way ahead of the rest of the world because we had money. Rockefeller was flush with money, so we can do things. We can buy these expensive recorders to record temperatures, cameras and radio telemetry equipment. And the other countries just started tagging along with us. They came to Rockefeller, and what they tell me, "Ted, we can't afford this. That Alligator telemetry program probably cost us $100,000 a year because we were renting helicopters all the time." But we were allowed to do it, but the wealth of information it justified the cost. Mm-hmm. And like today, we spend a lot of money, but that industry is generating $100 million a year to the people of the state of Louisiana. That's the beauty part about it.
You just spoke about industry. Mark, probably one of the coolest things that just struck my mind is here you are from Memphis, Tennessee. You're marketing relations guy for Strike King, Lew's, and Hunter Specialties. And so you're selling a product, whether it be fishing baits or rod and reels. I run Grove Savon, manage some property, take a lot of people hunting and fishing. And then here's a guy that's a biologist that loves to study things and learn about things, and yet the one common thing amongst us, even though you're doing a completely different thing in mine, is they all come together and we all share a passion. And it all relates down to the land and the management of habitat, and all the aspects come together. It creates a whole industry. And he keeps talking about money. You create to the economy. I generate things that contribute to the economy, and it's really cool that we all can share the same passion, even though we're doing slightly different things.
I've always said that we can do more things because there's more things we have in common than we don't have in common.
Yeah,
And when we
right.
come together on those common things,
Right.
the things that can be done are incredible.
And through good science, that can lead your direction, give you some direction. And that's the important thing. We can do it through research, pass it on down to the management people like Doug. He'll put it into application, and it'll work, and we'll keep feeding him that kind of information.
And providing economy for not only Louisiana, but for the whole United States.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And also the world. Those gators, the alligator is international in scope. You know, he's raised in South Louisiana. He's shipped to Europe, and the first part of the seasons, he ended up on a lady's arm in Japan. And that's how it went. But today, it's going more into Europe, and Europe is doing most of the tanning and building and selling right there in Europe, which is great. It's good money. The farmers are doing well, and that ensures the future of the alligator. That right there, because he's worth money. And a lot of people don't like that. That's kind of a nasty word with them. But when you look at what the alligator contributes to the economy, it's damn well, it's good to take care of him and encourage him, manage for him.
You got to look at the bigger scope, and the bigger scope is
Right.
what it does for the economy, for conservation,
Yeah.
for keeping this earth the way it should be
Right.
for years and years to come.
And you know, it's interesting. Here we took 1 million alligators out of the state of Louisiana. Populations are approaching 2 million. And we already harvested 1 million. Population looks exactly the same as when we first started in 1972. So I feel good about it. We can take advantage of that and not hurt the resource.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned that you were born in Metairie and you did some duck banding in Lake Salvador and that stuff, but eventually you ended up at Rockefeller. Tell us a little
Right.
about your history at Rockefeller.
Okay, when I graduated from LSU, well, going to graduate school, opportunity arose for me to work at Rockefeller on my master's degree.
Which Rockefeller, to most people don't know, that is a state wildlife refuge.
State-owned refuge, 85,000 acres. When I went there, it had about 65 producing oil and gas wells, and all that money stayed on Rockefeller. So I had all the money I needed to do the research. So I said, this is home. This is what I want. Oddly enough, my project was on marsh ecology, widgeon grass, the factors affecting widgeon grass and the growth of widgeon grass. But also, the department was starting this long-term research on alligators. And I said, man, I'm your man. You know, let's do it. Let's get it done. Bob Shawbrook was there at the time, Clark Hoffpower. Bob eventually got his PhD and went and taught at LSU. And Clark went on to work independently as an independent consultant. So I was put in charge of Rockefeller somewhere in the mid-60s, late 60s. And then I hired Larry McNeese, who is a tremendous guy. He and I worked together day and night for years, for 25 years. And I retired in 94. Larry retired a few years after that, 96, 97, 98, somewhere in there. But it was well worth the effort. And another thing, too, we had, on that educational clause I was telling you about the Rockefeller Foundation, we took that education clause and gave $100,000 to LSU, the graduate school. And we said, we have problems. We need somebody to study echinochlore, the millets, the fall panicums, the duck foods, and we need a student to come from LSU under my supervision and his major professor, and he does the work down here. We feed him, house him, and send him back a year later with a master's degree or a PhD degree. So it helped out for us. We can more or less spread out. We just weren't confined to alligators. We were doing things that we couldn't get to. We would contract them out through LSU, and that was the beauty part about that.
So you mentioned you retired in '94.
Yeah.
So how long was you actually at Rockefeller?
I was 1960 to 1994.
So that's a lot of math to do there.
Yeah,
Long time.
yeah.
So, and since then now, and that's where you and I have built our relationship, is you've done some consulting now for a lot of major landowners, and so
after I graduated, retired, some landowners called me and said, "Why don't you be a consultant for us, a wildlife consultant?" And I said, "Well, yeah, but I'm limited in knowledge." But anyway, they brought me on, and I helped them. At Rockefeller, Doug, you don't deal with the general public as much as you do. So we were kind of in a closed system. We were protected. So when you talk about getting permits for Sweet Lake Land and all to put a water control structure in, that was foreign to me. You know, we didn't do that. We just put the structure in. We were exempt from all that ridiculous stuff. But now you have to go through that, and it's time consuming, extremely expensive, and by the time your project comes out of this review period, it's almost totally different from what you when you put it in.
right.
And that's what's hurting this marsh today. I think I'd love to see the 404 permit process. If you have a marsh management project, it goes through a certain procedure. Now, if I want to drill an oil well out here, it's got to go into a different procedure. But they handle us just like they handle an oil company.
Right. I think what most people don't realize is there's 40% of the nation's wetlands right here in coastal Louisiana, but yet we have 80% of the nation's wetland loss.
Yeah.
And like you just said, I know it's difficult to get permits through, but you guys have done and proven a lot of the marsh management practices. We've talked about alligators, but marsh management at Rockefeller, y'all were the pioneers behind all of that.
Rockefeller was purchased by Mr. E. A. McElhenney in 1913 as a waterfowl sanctuary. Everything that we do at Rockefeller had to take ducks, get priority. And we managed through the installation of Wakefield weirs, water control structures, or impoundments. Before we started any management, the aerial surveys at Rockefeller showed about 50,000 birds on Rockefeller. After Shawbreck and Hoffpile put in a lot of water control structures and weirs and impoundments, we kicked that number up to 500,000 birds, right at 500,000. So you can bring these ducks in, you can provide them a suitable habitat, and this was the objective of Rockefeller. That's why it was given to the state of Louisiana by Mr. McElhenney in 1913.
So, today we hear a lot of arguments back and forth on how to manage waterfowl and that kind of stuff, and we don't have the ducks we used to and all that. What's your opinion of all that? Where do we stand with modern day waterfowl in the Mississippi Flyway?
Well, I think, 50 years ago, birds coming from Canada overflew and came to Louisiana. So we got the majority of the pie. Now Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas are learning how to divert these birds, to hold them up there for 6 weeks, whatever, to get a whack at them. And you can't, you got to agree with it.
So I think you and I sound like we're in agreement. My personal opinion is that we've still got a great number of ducks. Obviously, we have the counts. They're just dispersed over a larger area of habitat that didn't exist 30 years ago.
Exactly right. And two, I think hunters are going to have to more or less change their preferences. A lot of hunters want to go shoot greenheads or pintail or something like that. Well, those birds don't come here anymore. They short-stopped in Arkansas and Missouri and Oklahoma and God knows where. And that's good. That's no problem because they diversifying the habitat for ducks. If they'd come here and get a bad case of botulism in this marsh, we could lose half the Mississippi Flyway. But now they spread out over 5 different states. So they're more secure. And these other people are getting a share in a slice of the pie. And that's important because when you talk waterfowl hunting with Ducks Unlimited, you got friends from Arkansas, Missouri, and Oklahoma on your side of the table saying, yeah, we want to do this. We want to get this done.
Right.
And you know, you're going to have to go to gadwalls and teal and blue-winged teal and green-winged teal and things like this, and maybe some of the divers later on. But you still have the opportunity. I got 2 grandsons and 2 great-grandsons coming up. And those kids, those grandsons hunted with me since they were big enough to shoot a BB gun out of the blind. And now they're shooting shotguns, and they married and have children. But I was glad to expose them to this way of life. And they chose it. They want to keep it going. And this is good, I think, when you spend the day with your grandson in a duck blind, and he's not punching on that stupid computer, and you got him kind of encapsulated, and you can talk and visit. To me, that's so good.
Hope everyone enjoyed this episode of Beyond the Boat. Ted Johanen's such a great guy, and he's a wealth of information, and it's always a treat to sit down and get to pick his brain and learn stuff about alligators. You know, if you watched the last episode of Xpress Outdoors, you probably saw a clip where we were talking about Hurricane Laura. Hit almost a year to the date that we had filmed all these episodes. And people say that lightning doesn't strike twice in one place, but Hurricane Delta 6 weeks later has now hit southwest Louisiana for 2 hurricanes in a row. And Ted Johanen, along with Gros Savon, has been the victims of these 2 hurricanes. And since this episode with Ted Johanen, he has completely lost his house. The wind basically took most of the roof off and has destroyed it. He's currently living in a travel trailer and says he's determined to rebuild and enjoy southwest Louisiana again. So along with Gros Savon and all the damage that's in these areas right now in southwest Louisiana, we want to again reach out and thank everyone for their prayers and their thoughts. We've had a tremendous outreach of people wanting to help us, and we thank all of you guys for that. So just wanted to let y'all know that we are coming back. Our reopening has been a little bit delayed because now we've been hit with a double whammy, but Gros Savon is going to be better than it ever was. We're going to continue to improve on the experience that we present. And again, we want to thank everybody for their thoughts and prayers, and we hope you continue watching Xpress Outdoors.